Welcome back to another episode of SNEED-CAST Industry Update, our series that keeps you updated with our ever-changing industry. For those of you that have been watching the series for a while now, you know how this goes, but for those of you that are new, welcome. We'll be covering the latest in manufacturing, packaging, coding, sustainability, and much more. I'm your host Alexa, and today we'll discuss topics ranging from tariffs targeting Canada, China, and Mexico, causing disruptions across the industry, to the Trump administration's announcement to cut 90% of USAID foreign aid contracts, to increase tariffs on aluminum and steel affecting small and independent brewers, to states considering eliminating taxes on groceries, and finally, are egg giants profiting from this bird flu outbreak? Starting off, the implementation of tariffs by the Trump administration targeting Canada, China, and Mexico has caused significant disruptions across multiple industries. Introduced as part of a broader strategy to renegotiate trade deals and protect domestic industries, these tariffs had led to rising costs for businesses and heightened tensions with key trade partners. The tariffs range from 10% to 25% on goods such as aluminum, steel, and a broad array of imports from China, impacting companies reliant on these materials for manufacturing and distribution. Several industries have been forced to adapt to the shifting economic landscape. U.S. manufacturers, including automotive companies and appliance makers, report substantial increases in production costs. For example, Whirlpool, an American appliance giant, noted in their earnings call that the rising price of imported steel and aluminum due to tariffs has added approximately $350 million in extra costs annually. Consequently, many businesses have taken proactive measures such as diversifying supply chains or looking to source materials domestically to mitigate the financial burden. The tariffs have introduced significant challenges, especially for small to mid-sized enterprises with limited resources to absorb the heightened expenses. Industries such as agriculture have also faced a ripple effect, especially as retaliation from Canada and China led to increased tariffs on exported American goods like soybeans and pork. Greg Smith, a spokesperson for the Midwest Soybean Association, remarked, "Farmers are bearing the brunt of this trade war. We've seen a nearly 20% decline in soybean exports to China this year." To counterbalance these issues, the U.S. government has rolled out financial assistance programs, including a $12 billion federal aid package for affected farmers. Additionally, some businesses have lobbied for tariff exemptions or sought tariff offsets through international negotiations. The ripple effects of the tariffs have reshaped the business landscape in the United States. While certain domestic manufacturers may benefit from reduced competition from imports, the overall impact has been marked by rising consumer prices and a slowdown in global trade. Moody's Analytics estimates that the tariffs could decrease U.S. GDP by 0.3%, equating to a $60 billion economic loss annually. On the other hand, the strategy has sparked ongoing debates around the importance of fair trade practices versus a potential negative impact on global supply chains and economic stability. These developments underscore the necessity for businesses to remain agile and innovative in navigating an increasingly uncertain. Let me read through that. Yep. These developments underscore the necessity for businesses to remain agile and innovative in navigating an increasingly uncertain global trade environment. Moving on, the Trump administration's announcement to cut 90% of USAID foreign aid contracts marks a significant shift in U.S. global aid policy. Currently, foreign aid accounts for less than 1% of the federal budget, roughly $39 billion annually. But these proposed cuts could reduce funding to as little as $3.9 billion, a dramatic decrease with far-reaching consequences. USAID, a key agency responsible for delivering humanitarian support and development assistance worldwide, has played a vital role in addressing global health issues, poverty, and education. For example, USAID-funded programs have contributed to a 60% reduction in child mortality rates over the past 25 years and provided life-saving HIV and AIDS treatment to over 14 million people. However, the administration's decision to slash aid stems from efforts to focus on America First policies, prioritizing domestic investment over foreign spending. The magnitude of the reduction is staggering. The proposed cuts, amounting to billions of dollars annually, could significantly disrupt programs in over 100 countries. Administration officials argue the goal is to improve efficiency and ensure taxpayer dollars are directed toward initiatives aligned with U.S. interests. Acting Administrator for the USAID, John Barsa, stated, "We must streamline operations and focus on measurable results to maximize the impact of every dollar spent. The restructuring aims to emphasize strategic partnerships with a select few nations rather than providing widespread funding. Historically, 60% of U.S. aid has gone to just 10 countries, including key allies like Israel and Jordan. These alliances may remain supported but smaller. Vulnerable nations reliant on aid, including those in sub-Saharan Africa, face uncertainty. Critics warn that such drastic reductions pose significant global challenges. For instance, health programs funded by the USAID have led to a 40% decrease in malaria deaths globally and supported immunizations that save 2 to 3 million lives annually. Cutting these programs could reverse decades of progress and leave regions vulnerable to disease outbreaks like malaria and HIV and AIDS. Advocacy groups suggest alternative solutions such as targeted evaluations and performance-based funding to address inefficiencies without eliminating life-saving initiatives. The impact of these changes will resonate globally. Economically, developing nations that depend on U.S. aid could face significant strain. Some countries receive over 20% of their national budgets from the U.S. assistance funds. Politically, reduced aid could create opportunities for rival powers like China, which already spend approximately $85 billion annually on international loans and investments to expand their influence. Domestically, while cuts may provide marginal budget savings, potentially around $35 billion annually, they risk damaging America's reputation as a leader in humanitarian aid and diplomacy. Former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright noted, "Foreign aid is not charity. It is an investment in global security and prosperity, which has long-term benefits for the U.S." The consequence of these cuts could jeopardize not only the well-being of millions worldwide, but also America's strategic position in an increasingly interconnected global landscape. Moving on, the Trump administration recently announced new tariffs on aluminum and steel imports with a 25% tariff set to take effect on March 12th. This move builds on similar actions taken during Trump's first term in 2018, where Section 232 tariffs were imposed under the Trade Expansion Act of 1962 to assess import impacts on national security. While previous tariffs exempted key trading partners like Canada, the European Union, and South Korea, President Trump has confirmed that no such exemptions will apply to these newly announced measures. The administration also hinted at introducing reciprocal tariffs on foreign countries that impose tariffs on U.S. exports, signaling a more aggressive trade stance. Recent negotiations with Canada and Mexico show the administration's use of tariffs as a bargaining chip, with a temporary pause granted in exchange for increased cooperation on border security and fentanyl control. The new tariffs pose significant challenges for industries reliant on aluminum and steel. For example, Canada, the largest supplier of aluminum and steel to the U.S., accounts for a substantial portion of these imports, close to 40% for steel alone. Including Canada and these tariffs is expected to lead to widespread price increases on aluminum and steel products. Small and independent breweries, which already face rising costs, could be hit particularly hard. The Brewers Association, representing American craft beer producers, noted that aluminum price spiked even when Canada was excluded from the 2018 tariffs. This impacted the cost of aluminum cans, a packaging method increasingly favored by craft brewers. In 2023, aluminum cans accounted for 68.4% of packaged craft beer by volume, and by early 2025, they made up 75% of both volume and revenue. The anticipated rise in aluminum prices will likely increase production costs across the board for brewers. Beyond aluminum, steel tariffs could also affect breweries by driving up the cost of essential equipment such as kegs, brew houses, steel tanks, and building materials. Additionally, breweries exporting beer to Canada, America's largest craft beer export market, accounting for 37.5% of exports, may face retaliatory tariffs, with some provinces already canceling U.S. shipments or promoting Canadian-made options. These tariffs could significantly disrupt businesses that rely heavily on metal imports, especially small breweries. Higher material costs and potential retaliatory trade measures could squeeze profit margins, limit growth, and strain international relationships. To address these challenges, the Brewers Association is actively working with Congress and the administration to advocate for American-made products while minimizing harm to small brewers. They emphasize the importance of keeping members informed about policy changes and exploring ways to mitigate the industry's financial burden. The evolving trade landscape underscores the need for vigilance and continued dialogue between the administration and affected industries to balance economic growth with trade fairness. Moving on, with inflation continuing to press heavily on household budgets, the cost of groceries across the United States has reached staggering highs, disproportionately affecting low and middle-income families. According to recent data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, grocery prices have risen by over 13% since last year, a sharp increase that has left many families struggling to afford basic items like bread, milk, and eggs. Combined with existing state-level grocery taxes ranging anywhere from 2% to 6% depending on the region, many Americans face further financial stress just to meet their daily needs. Recognizing the burden of rising costs, various states have begun introducing measures to alleviate the financial strain on citizens by eliminating or reducing taxes on groceries. For example, Virginia recently reduced its food tax rate from 2.5% to 1% as part of a larger legislative effort to counteract inflation's impact. Meanwhile, Kansas passed a bill in 2022 to phase out its 6.5% state tax on groceries over the next 3 years, a move lauded by Governor Laura Kelly as a critical step toward creating financial relief for working families. At least 13 other states, including Illinois and Tennessee, have also temporarily suspended or proposed changes to their food tax policies. These efforts represent a growing recognition amongst lawmakers that targeted tax reforms could provide much-needed support during periods of economic volatility. Despite the benefits such measures provide, challenges remain in funding the revenue gap left by removing grocery taxes. Opponents of food tax reforms argue that abolishing these taxes could significantly reduce state budgets, forcing cuts to essential programs in education, healthcare, and infrastructure. According to a statement from the Tax Policy Center, food taxes provide an estimated 5% of total state revenues in some areas, which makes their elimination a difficult financial trade-off. To address this challenge, some policymakers have proposed innovative solutions. For instance, legislators in Utah have suggested reallocating funds from other budgetary areas or increasing taxes on non-essential goods to balance the loss in revenue. Similarly, advocates argue that federal funding or surplus revenues can temporarily cushion the economic impact on state budgets until more permanent solutions are identified. The ongoing push to reduce or eliminate grocery taxes is reshaping the economic landscape for American families, especially those who are most vulnerable. For individuals living paycheck to paycheck, the elimination of an average 4% grocery tax could mean saving hundreds of dollars annually, enabling them to redirect funds toward housing, healthcare, or education. Furthermore, removing grocery taxes may also have a psychological impact, rebuilding consumer confidence in times of financial uncertainty. Douglas Holtz-Eakin, an economist and former director of the Congressional Budget Office, noted, "Providing direct financial relief on necessities like food allows citizens to feel more in control over their expenditures during times when everything else may feel uncertain or out of reach." Ultimately, while the road toward broad grocery tax reform may pose obstacles, its potential to provide substantial financial relief underscores its growing relevance in American legislative agendas. And we've made it to our final story. The recent outbreak of avian influenza has caused a significant disruption in the egg industry, raising questions about whether skyrocketing egg prices are a genuine result of reduced supply or a business strategy to amplify profits. The bird flu epidemic, which began in early 2022, has led to the culling of over 58 million birds in the U.S. alone, with nearly 44 million of those being egg-laying hens. The substantial decrease in the poultry population has undeniably affected the market, but many consumers and advocacy groups are now questioning whether price hikes are proportional to the losses incurred. While producers cite supply chain pressures and rising input costs, USDA data reveals that wholesale egg prices more than tripled over the course of the outbreak, surging from $1.79 per dozen in December of 2021 to a record-breaking $5.46 per dozen in December of 2022. Critics argue this increase far exceeds what could be solely attributed to supply constraints. The level of culling seen this year doesn't fully justify the degree of price escalation, stated Mark Johnson, a representative from the consumer advocacy group Farm Supervision, suggesting that profit margins may be playing a role in driving costs upward. Additionally, some egg-producing companies reported significant significant profits in 2022, with one major producer disclosing a 600% rise in quarterly earnings. The outbreak has undeniably posed challenges including maintaining biosecurity measures, navigating disrupted supply chains, and addressing consumer outcry over affordability. Egg producers have invested in stringent monitoring programs to prevent disease outbreaks, but questions remain about the transparency of pricing mechanisms. Regulators such as the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Federal Trade Commission are being urged to investigate potential price gouging. Addressing the crisis requires balancing long-term biosecurity solutions with fair pricing practices that meet market demand without exploiting consumers. The bird flu outbreak and its associated costs have highlighted vulnerabilities within the food supply chain. Consumers are bearing the financial burden as high egg prices force some to reduce their purchases of this vital household staple. On the other hand, large egg producers are experiencing higher than expected profits, which intensifies scrutiny from regulators and advocacy groups. The controversy has sparked wider discussions about ethical pricing, corporate responsibility, and the need for greater market oversight during times of crisis. Moving forward, lessons learned from this outbreak could drive reforms in supply chain management and governance, potentially shaping the future of the egg industry. This episode of SNEED-CAST Industry Update is brought to you by our SNEED-Jet Infinity printer. The SNEED-Jet Infinity inkjet coater is great for inkjet coating various substrates such as glass, plastic, metal, flexible packaging, boxes, glossy boxes, and much more. It has high-end networking capabilities, allowing you to wirelessly monitor and control multiple SNEED-Jet Infinity printers throughout your facility from a single CPU or your laptop in your control room. It prints with 600 dpi high resolution. It can print alphanumeric text, date codes, lot codes, external data, barcodes, counters, logos, static, and variable information. Not to mention that when paired with the SIX30 cartridge, you can achieve extended print distances of up to 10 millimeters far. The SNEED-Jet Infinity is a powerful and intuitive inkjet printer. Like always, stay tuned for our next episode of SNEED-CAST Industry Update, and make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell down below to stay up to date with all of our great content. Also, let us know what topics you'd like to see us talk about here on the show. We look forward to hearing from you all. Bye, everyone.